Hello, welcome back. Monsters, more monsters. The continuing story of monsters, and more monsters. And yeah, we're dealing with the gargoyle today, believe it or not. I have a lot of book resources in front of me. I have done a bit of research trying to crack the nut that is the gargoyle, because the gargoyle, like the animated armor, is a little bit of a problem. It has a little snag to be solved, and I think I finally figured out how to solve that snag with the gargoyle, which means I will also be able to do the animated armor, and I have been avoiding it. I'm putting up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll, and we'll be drawing on every version of D&D you can imagine, and a few clones along the way. So yes, this should be very interesting. So grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable, and let's get started, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, specifically Dungeons & Dragons 2025. That is the new Monster Manual and the Gargoyle from there. Or I'm also thinking in terms of the 5e Gargoyle from 2014. It has been around a while. They've made some adjustments and changes, of which I agree with some and disagree with others. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it apart. I have prepared a document so I can do that and show you. But like everything I do on my channel, I'm really interested in what people have to say about their feedback and their idea of how it might be done. I do believe the gargoyle does need a serious adjustment, and that the 2025 version that has just been released in the new Monster Manual for 2025 is not good enough. I see where they're going, but they missed the mark, and so we're going to deal with that. So my question to you, flyby. Yes, I know what you're thinking about. There is, Fred Huber is a patron and a moderator. There is precedence for a swooping attack, as you know, Fred, because I know you're familiar with AD&D. There is in older versions of D&D, they did swoop down and make attacks, so I can understand why they're going with flyby attack. But there's also the lack of another feature, right, that we need to deal with, and so that's part of the problem. So I am going to share my document in a second, but let me just get over to here so you get to see my face while I type in some various information. I want to ask you this question. What changes to the gargoyle would you make for D&D 2025? Okay, so the first thing is I am going to make fairly significant changes this time round compared to some of the other stat blocks. I've made a lot of big changes in the past, but this is really kind of like a reimagining, because there are certain things that I have been avoiding doing in an attempt to allow them to have their backward compatibility in their adventures by not moving challenge rating. One of the things that Wizards of the Coast has been big on is we're going to do the monsters, but we're not changing their challenge rating. I don't believe it's a solo monster. I feel like the gargoyle will be in groups. You're going to have more than one gargoyle, so it's not going to be built as a solo for me, or even a legendary monster. I don't think it needs to be built that way. But you'll notice with everything that I've been doing so far, I too have not moved or adjusted the challenge rating for a monster. But today, I will be, because the challenge rating is way too low. And I understand why they left the challenge rating where it was. The rationale being is if we have more low-level monsters that are less than one challenge rating, like an eighth, a quarter, a half, or challenge rating 1 or 2, then you can use more of those monsters in the lower level campaigns. I totally get that. But the gargoyle is not a low-level monster. It really should be much, much higher than it is. And if you look at AD&D, Usually the level of a monster is determined by the number of hit dice it has. The gargoyle traditionally has had 4 hit dice, which suggests, as I've discovered in Shadow Dark, Kelsey believes this is the way to go, and has marked that monster as a level 4 monster. I don't think that level 4 is going to work myself, but I certainly don't think I'm going to leave it where it is. So this is really not following the idea that Wizard of the Coast can keep their monsters where they were. Their backward compatibility, in my opinion, is a load of shit. It is the biggest nonsense and biggest PR propaganda I've seen in a long time from them, and I'm not playing that game. So we're going to do this properly. This means I can solve problems without restricting myself. Like before, I couldn't do that with a lot of the stat blocks, and so I'd been avoiding them. But now, let's just do the job properly. Okay. Typically, 1 per corner of the building they inhabit. Yes, yeah. You could have 2, 4, whatever. But, you could have gargoyles right across the front of the building if you want to. Hello, Thomas. This one needs to have resistance to normal items, like it's been forever. I'm doing something much more than that, Thomas, because there is another problem with regard to what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Damage resistance to piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage. Thank you, JWS. Yes. Let's get on with the job, shall we? Because that's what we're here for. Limited time and never enough time to do it, as I've discovered, and it's hot. So, hence, no hat. There is a purpose for my hat, believe it or not. It is because I would get cold. And it makes me look like a magician. Like I might actually know what I'm doing. But I am a normal person. Okay, so here is our stat block that I've put into my Google document. I have updated and highlighted a bunch of different things that you might have noticed here. Look at that. Look, I've highlighted it. And you'll see this is the new stat block which I showed you before. Let's start with the assumption that challenge rating 2 is not good enough. Now, why is this? My general belief is that this monster in the past has been like a level 4 monster for a reason, okay? And one of it is because it needs to, one of the key aspects is the fact that it flies and makes an attack, the fact that it is probably going to get surprise on your party, and that means they're going to get to go first, right? And they are difficult to damage because of the fact they're made of like essentially magical stone. So, or stonework, they're animated stone. So that means they're going to be harder. So we're going to use the idea that the challenge rating must go up. So I think at least a 4 or a 5. Now to keep an armor class of +5 here, we really need to shift some things. Because if you look at the table that I've created here, which is based off the Dungeon Master Guide, the table in there, the quick build monster step. This has got some adjustments to it, okay? You'll notice that I have put here that at Armor Class 15 is at least a challenge rating 5 monster. And that is where I think we need to sit. It also means it needs to get 2 attacks, and it needs to be doing between 17 and 21 points of damage for each attack, okay? And it's going to have a proficiency bonus of +3. So I am actually pushing it a little bit higher than it would traditionally be. And that is simply to duplicate the armor class. And also too, there is a point. Most campaigns, Game Masters are giving out a magical weapon at about that time. This is a good time to have a gargoyle show up, in my opinion. So that is why we're targeting for challenge rating 5. So we've got to go down here. I'm changing it. It is being adjusted. For those of you who want to argue the point that it should be challenge rating 4, feel free to do so. But just in terms of, the power boost that characters get is about this point, and this is a good time to do it because that it now reflects the fact that there is a power boost. Like this is a monster that can properly deal with that power boost as well. So let's see, it would be 1,000. Okay, so I need to do this, make this adjustment here. Sorry, people. 1800. That's it. So 1,800 experience points. It is going to have a proficiency bonus of +3, which means this changes a lot of the math. So I'm aware. Okay, so I close that up. I'll put that aside. Let's go up here. This means that our challenge rating being 5 solves so many problems. Armor class 15 is not a big deal. We can get away with having an armor class of 15 with a challenge rating 4 monster because you're only moving the armor class by 1 point. So that's actually fine. Like you can do that and it wouldn't really break the maths of the game. By moving too far out of these parameters on this table, this is where you wind up causing problems for your players, okay? This is the only part of the thing you can actually balance. You can't really balance special abilities, so you have to kind of guess where's the best time for a monster to be encountered by the player characters where they probably have something at their disposal they can deal with that problem. So, yes, so that's where we're going to go. And now, hit points. We'll deal with our hit points. How many hit points? It says here between 131 and 145 off my table. And I haven't made adjustments. I haven't tested this properly yet. But we're going to aim for that as our target. Right now, it's too low. So we need to add more dice. Okay, so we're going to add more dice. Real simple. So let's grab this over here. And now, I guess, I guess for me, one of the more complicated problems with these monsters is if I get rid of, if I do this, this actually changes the ability scores as well. So I'm actually going to have to come back to that. I'm actually going to have to do something with it. I don't think I need to change the con. I'm actually fine with the con being where it is. I was thinking really hard about its strength because I actually thought that its strength is probably way too low for being a challenge rating 5 monster. It probably needs to have at least an 18, in my opinion, to be viable at that level because player characters will have probably an 18 themselves in their best ability score, and if we leave them too far behind they just can't keep up, so we're going to have to probably change this as well. So let's do this. I think if we've got an 8-sided dice and we have to add another 32 points at least just to get it into the ballpark. 32 points is a lot, so we might have to boost this by a bunch of dice. So let's try a couple of calculations for the top end. Let's start off with 12. 12 times 8 equals that. That's 96, which I will write down, 96 on my piece of paper here. And then if I'm doing 12 dice, I go 12 times the con modifier, which is 3, gives me 36. Okay, so then I'm going to add my 96. Bingo. 12 is the answer. We're in the ballpark now. So 12, and that needs to be a, was that a 32? 33, I think, I can't remember. I'll do it in a second. I'll just redo the calculation. Oh, it was 36, wasn't it? 12 times 3, 36. Not that, okay. 36, okay, that's better, which means we get a total of 132, correct? 132. Let's make sure I got that right again. Do my maths again. There, plus the 36, 132. Okay, now we need the average, because the average is not going to be that low. So average of 8 is 4.5. Multiplied by 12. Okay, and then we add the 36, and we get a 90. Okay, I can live with that. So between 90 and 132. You might be saying, Fred, that's way too much. That's way too much. No, it's not. It's a level 5. Characters will be fine. They'll be fine. Okay, I'm fine with the fly speed. I'm fine with the walking speed. We don't need to mess with any of that. Let's deal with this problem here. At level, at least below level 4, the characters are definitely going to have a fairly sizable bonus, like a 16, probably their best score. And then when they get to level 4, they're going to boost their ability score, unless of course they take a feat. And if they do, they suffer, and who cares? they're going to go up to an 18. So I'm going to give this an 18. Otherwise, it can't really play with the big boys. The big boys and girls will bash it and crush it, and it will be no more. So we don't want to do that. So that is what we're doing. Now, why do we do this? There's a couple of different reasons, and you'll see as I go. Next, stealth. It has basically got expertise in stealth. Now, I'm fine with giving it expertise in stealth. There is a problem with giving it expertise in stealth. In fact, there's a problem, I believe, in giving it any kind of stealth score, because I think it's a no-brainer that it shouldn't actually be a factor. But there is a time where if the gargoyle is moving, we might need to have the stealth score. But if it's staying still, I honestly don't think there should be a dice roll involved at all, and I will explain to you why I'm thinking this way. So we're going to go with here stealth, and it's going to double the proficiency, which is now a 3, which now means this is a 6. Okay, it's going to be a lot higher. Damage immunities. Now, damage resistance we're not going to use. The reason I don't want to use damage resistance is it creates a lot of extra homework and complexity for the Game Master and Dungeon Master and for players. I've seen damage resistance. I understand what it's trying to do, but honestly, I think it is a mechanic that should be dumped, because it was bloody awful in 4E and 3.5 and version 3, and frankly any time it's used, because it just chews up so much time. So fuck it, I'm not going to use it. But I will use damage immunities, and I will use condition immunities. I'm fine with those. So here is a couple of things you're probably going to be a little bit surprised by, but let's do this. So poison. Now, what other damage types would I want to make it immune to? There is actually another one, and I'm wondering how I should structure this. I think it's going to look like this. Piercing and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. Now, you may have noticed something here. I did not write down bludgeoning, and I don't plan to make bludgeoning a vulnerability. And the reason why is this. I'm still going to go with the idea that a gargoyle is kind of like fighting a skeleton, where really a bludgeoning weapon should be more effective at destroying this thing. But there's always been this problem that if you decide to make damage immunity, piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage to non-magical weapons, okay, so it means you have to have a magical weapon, then you kind of make, the argument is that the front line, the marshals, are useless, that they can't do anything. Well, they can dodge, and they can block so somebody else can do the damage. But of course, everybody wants to be the hero, right? So I had to think about this logically. What is the most efficient way to destroy a stone gargoyle? Or just a stone statue? It is not to use a slashing weapon or a piercing weapon. It is to use a bludgeoning weapon. Okay? So piercing and slashing damage is not going to do anything to it unless it is magical, in my opinion. You might scratch it a little bit, but it doesn't care. And gargoyle is a magical stone creature. Okay? So we're going to leave bludgeoning not as a vulnerability. It is just not going to be a damage immunity to bludgeoning, non-magical weapons. That means you can use a non-magical weapon that is bludgeoning and the front line as a marshal to actually hurt this thing. And that's exactly what they should be doing in the first place. Okay? There's no point shooting it with an arrow. There's no point getting out your sword if you don't have a mace or a morning star or something that can bash it, or a hammer to actually smash it properly. Then you're screwed. And tough shit. That's where I'm going to go with. Like that, I think it solves a lot of those problems that we had before. Let's have a look at the damage immunities. Damage immunities D&D 5e. Let's go down. I need to make sure I've got them. Damage immunities. Damage types. Not damage immunities, damage types. Let's make sure we got all the right ones. Types. Okay, so what are the damage types? Acid. Acid should be able to hurt a... whether it's magical acid or non-magical acid from a spell, that should be damaging a statue for sure. Bludgeoning, absolutely. Cold, yes, because it could crack it. Fire is an interesting one. It's going to scorch it. Fire's one of those ones where I might actually add that. Force is probably, yeah, okay, I can see that. Lightning, that's an interesting one too. I don't think it should be affected by necrotic damage because it's a construct. So I'm going to add in necrotic to this list. N should be here, shouldn't it? If I go like that, paste necrotic. Oh, that's not the right one. Let's try again. That's the right one, necrotic. Okay, so we've added a necrotic, and then what else do we have here? Radiant. Yeah, I'm fine with Radiant doing it. Psychic. Well, it's got some sort of blind, so that's fine. I mean, it is a construct, so I guess Psychic could be one that it wouldn't be affected by. Thunder, yes, I feel like that could crack it. Lightning is another one that I'm a little bit unsure about. Fire is like... Is fire really going to hurt it? I think I should add fire as well. Slashing, absolutely not going to do anything to it unless it's a magical thingy. Piercing, no. Poison doesn't make any sense. So we add in fire as well. And then we go here. And I think... Okay, I think those are the damage immunities that I wanted to have. Do we need to have a saving throw for this creature? I am inclined to potentially give it a saving throw, just because it is a challenge rating, whatever. Saving throws might be a good idea. What would I give it? Probably only... Would I give it dexterity? I'm not even sure I'd give it any of those. I actually think it's fine if it was vulnerable to wisdom checks, and it's not going to really matter too because it's got some condition immunities here that don't make sense either. Okay, so that's our damage immunities for now. There's our stealth. I think we should also include perception. I noticed that the monsters nowadays get a boost to initiative. Do they have it here? Oh, here we go. Initiative. So it's a +2. So they're giving it +2, which means it gets a passive check of 12. So we're going to build it this way as well, but I'm not going to build it like that. I'm actually fine with that idea. Conceptually, it actually is really smart. Like, because sometimes the monsters there's too many different ways for the player characters to change their initiative, but the monsters don't have any of that. So let's work on this bit here. So we're going to give them proficiency in this, which means it's a 3, which now means that this is going to be a 13. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit better. It's not hugely great, but it won't matter because it's got a special ability that we're going to use. Next, condition immunities. So let's break down our condition immunities. I have no problem with exhaustion. I have no problem with petrified, and I have no problem with poisoned. What I do have a problem with is traditionally something like sleep or charm does not affect a gargoyle. If you have a look at AD&D, charm doesn't really work. You know, if you want to charm it, it ain't going to work. So don't bother. So let's go through here. Here are our various things. So first, unconscious. No, it should not be immune to that condition. Stunned. I'm fine in this case with a monk being able to stun a gargoyle, because it's not going to necessarily be fighting alone, and probably should not be. It should be one of many. So that's fine. Let them stun it. Restrained. No, I don't think we need to make them immune to that. Prone, that's not a problem as far as I'm concerned. Poisoned, I'm not worried. That's already there, so that's fine. And then if we start looking at some of the other ones, petrified, it's already stone, so that makes no sense. So we're keeping that. Paralyzed. Do I want you to be able to paralyze this thing? Yes, I think there's some... I think there's a place to say that you should be able to paralyze a stone creature. Obviously, invisibility and capacitator don't apply. Grapple shouldn't apply. Frightened. Now, this is one of those things that I don't think you should be able to frighten a gargoyle. Why would it? It has no concept of its own survival. It's like skeletons. Like, why would you be able to frighten a zombie or a skeleton? Unless you're using something like turn undead. This is not undead, and I think frightened should live here. So I'm putting it in. E, A, B, C, D, E, F, F. Sorry, frightened. That is adding to the conditions, I know. And we're also going to add in charmed. Because traditionally you couldn't charm magically a gargoyle, and I think that makes sense because really there's nothing upstairs to affect. So why? This is why I'm very tempted to add in psychic from the damage types, because that's one of the damage types where I honestly think it makes a lot of sense to leave that as a damage immunity. It's not going to... Affecting its mind is kind of pointless. In fact, maybe I'm just going to do that now. I've been saying it a lot. I think we just do it. Because there's not much upstairs on this creature. So, psychic O, and it goes at the end, doesn't it? I know it has a lot of damage, condition immunities and damage immunities. I know there's a lot, but there's a lot that aren't there. So we're all right. We are. Psychic won't be effective. Psychic. Okay. Alright, this is a challenge rating 5 monster now. Now, going through here, I think I've got all of the conditions. This thing doesn't really have eyes. That's another thing. So I'm adding in another one, which is blinded. Blinding it will be pointless. It doesn't really have ears. I'm going to add in deafened as well. Okay, alright. Deafened, sorry. Okay, now this, you know what I'm doing here. I don't think dark vision makes sense with a construct. It is using magical senses. I'm going to give it blind sight. And 60 feet is kind of pathetic. I'm giving it 120 feet. Our passive check here. Oh, this is one of the things I was supposed to do was the skills. I'm going to give it perception as a skill. Even though its wisdom is very low, I'm still going to give it perception. Because it is a guard. Gargoyles essentially are guardians. They're guards, so they should be perceptive, and they are supposed to be ambush creatures or monsters, constructs. So they should be good at stealth, and they should be good at noticing stuff. So if we're not going to move the wisdom score and push it up a little bit, which I think we probably should, we definitely need to do something about its perception. So I'm going to do that. And in fact, we're going to move this as well. For those of you who are wondering what was going to happen, yep, there it is. I just made a change. Wisdom is now +1. Okay, which means we're not going to just give it proficiency. We're going to give it expertise, just like we did with the stealth. So that is 3 and 3 +1. Okay, I know that means that its perception is significantly better, but I honestly think it should be. We're going to get a 7. That's where I think it should sit. So +7. And then there are our skills. I don't feel like it needs to have necessarily any other skills. I mean, we could give it athletics if we wanted. I think sometimes we don't give monsters enough skills in our stat blocks, and they could probably do with a few more. But yeah. Do I want to do that? Do I want to do that? No, actually, now I think about it, it's a construct that can stay there. It doesn't really have much going on. It is just sort of average, so we can make that a 6. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I think I've done this part of the stat block. We need to start dealing with the next part of the stat block, which I will. You'll notice that they have given it flyby in the new stat block, and they have removed one of its special features, which was used in the past in 2014, which is false appearance. And I know why they've removed false appearance. And I want to explain a little bit about why they've done so and how we can correct the problem that they foresaw with false appearance. And also point out that some of their assumptions are probably incorrect in terms of what they should be doing here. But before I do that, before I do this bit, which won't take actually that long, we've done most of the heavy lifting if you ask me. What I would like to do is I would go to chat and have a look and see what you guys have said, because I know that you guys have been plugging your ideas in there. So we need to go and check you out, see what you've said, and then I'll do the final sort of thing. Fire immunity, Earthbind. There is an Earthbind spell, but look, my group never uses Earthbind anyway. I believe fire immunity does make sense. Did I leave fire immunity out? I thought I had put fire immunity in. Yes, yeah, damage immunity, fire, necrotic, poison, and psychic, and also piercing, slashing damage from non-magical weapons. I think it's there. Okay, all right. And describe a lot more statues that aren't creatures when PCs are given location descriptions. Yes, you need to include, so this is one of the things, you need to include more gargoyles or statues that look like a gargoyle, like, a demonic statue is, and you need to make sure you include more into your adventures so that the players don't assume that every single demonic looking statue on the side of a building or on a rooftop is a gargoyle that will come down and attack them. That's what you're trying to say. You added fire immunity several minutes. Yeah, okay. You just posted it. Cool. All right, so we're on the same track. I think we're in the right place. So let's deal with the special abilities and its attacks, and just tidy that all up and solve a lot of the silly problems that have been created for the stat block. Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Appreciate that, Fred. Good to have you here. Let's tidy up the rest of it. Okay. All right. So now I could go and pull up all the different books that are floating. I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books here in front of me to figure out the stat block. And I could show you and talk about what's in there, but there's really no point, because it's pretty clear what I was trying to communicate. So here's my thought on how to solve a lot of this problem. First of all, I understand why flyby is here. The gargoyle doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity when it flies out of an enemy's reach. So it's a really long-winded way of saying the gargoyle can get in and out and attack, and it's not a problem. This is a really long-winded way of saying it. We're going to condense it down a little bit. But if you look at AD&D, there was, it did say that gargoyles can't swoop down and make attacks. Now, the problem is in 5e, there's a thing called the reaction. An opportunity attacks essentially meant that gargoyles could get absolutely trounced to pieces if they try to do this. It's not necessarily an optimal technique or tactic for a gargoyle, even though that is the tactic you should be using. Is you fly past them, you make your attacks, and you're done. That's what you should be doing. But in 5e in 2025, or was it 2024 and 2025? This isn't going to work without it just not being optimal. So the rules work against the monster. The gargoyle doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity when it flies. That's it. That's all we need to say. When it flies. So it can fly by and make its attack, and it will be fine. Moving in and out will be a problem. That's why we have flyby. We're keeping flyby. Now, false appearance. This is another problem. Now, there's a couple of things that I am aware of over the years. This is like back right before 2014 when the book came out. Did it come out in 2014? It might have actually been 2015. The original Monster Manual, when it came out, we play tested. We play tested the Gargoyle beforehand, and there was always a problem with false appearance. And this is what I'm going to say about false appearance. When you say to somebody, false appearance, while the gargoyle remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an inanimate statue. What the hell does that tell to a dungeon master? So the arguments have gone that it really means nothing because it's just flavor text. The other argument has been, well, that must mean that the gargoyle has advantage on a stealth check to remain motionless so that it can surprise the player characters. But it doesn't state that. And if they had meant that, they would have written, you get advantage. And they didn't write that. So I don't think that was their intention, the original design of it. Next is they didn't give it a standard bonus. They didn't say, you add your proficiency bonus to this. Instead, what they have done in the older monster is they just gave it a stealth skill that was pretty decent. Like it wasn't a bad one. Like, the original 5e Gargoyle doesn't have stealth, and I think this ability was supposed to sort of duplicate that. So what they've done is in the stat block here, they've given the Gargoyle a really good solid stealth score. I've given it a much better one. It's now 6. And that's partly trying to duplicate this, but this is where the problem lies. There are 2 circumstances that the Gargoyle will be dealing with. One is it stays still and it can potentially have a better chance of surprising and attacking the player characters and getting that surprise in. Okay. And then there's the other situation where it is moving around quietly trying to sneak up on somebody so it can get surprise on them. There's 2 circumstances we're dealing with here. So we keep and retain the bonus to our stealth for the movement side of things. But when it's remaining still, I think the intent is that you automatically succeed on a stealth check, on a dexterity stealth check to basically to hide. And they never wrote this in here. And the design team are they've been pretty good about trying to balance things out. But I also know they're worried about surprising the player characters and giving them automatic sort of success on a stealth check for a monster. Yet players have automatically cannot be surprised if they take the alert feat, essentially. Like, the alert feat is, if you're using 2014, you got it. You're using the new one, I mean, you still kind of got it, right? It's still there. It hasn't really moved. It's still a thing. Which really means that, when a character can never be surprised, there's a problem. So we're not going to be able to solve the problem of the alert feat, but we can solve the problem of the gargoyle remaining motionless and being able to have a significant advantage over everything else. This is how I think false appearance should have been written many, many years ago, like 14 years ago. This is 10 years ago now. Actually 12 years ago. This is right back before, back in the beta and the alpha playtest as well for D&D Next. While the gargoyle remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an inanimate statue and automatically succeeds on dexterity bracket stealth checks, whoopsies, to hide. There you go. As long as it remains motionless, it is automatically succeeding. This is really what I think the original intent of false appearance was. It's the same thing with the roper. It is the same thing with any creature that had false appearance. This is probably how it should have been worded. So you mechanically know you automatically succeed on the dexterity stealth check to hide. Yep, because you got your perception and your hide interacting with each other. This is how it should work, in my opinion. Okay, here's our next problem, and that is the attacks. Now, multi-attack, I said before, when we do this, challenge rating 5 should have 2 attacks. There we are. Okay, and we're going to give it 2 attacks. And it's got down here listed, the gargoyle makes 2 claw attacks. Now, this is the new stat block. It has gotten rid of the bite. And it used to have a bite and a claw, I believe. Now, the problem is it takes up more space, it's kind of unwieldy, and it's really unnecessary in most respects. I understand why they've condensed it down to, it doesn't bite, it just claws, and you get 2 claw attacks. Okay. The gargoyle makes 2 attacks, 2 melee attacks. In fact, no, just 2 attacks. If you decide to throw shit, you could. But I wouldn't do that. 2 attacks. We don't need to specify what those attacks are. It just makes 2 attacks. Next, it's got here claw, melee, attack, and this is not going to be good enough. Challenge rating 5 should have a +7. Your characters are probably going to have a +7. So the gargoyle needs to have at least a +7 to keep up with them. So that's where we're going with this. Strength, that's why we changed the strength from to an 18 and gave it a +4 for a modifier, and that's why we need a proficiency bonus of +3. We're now in line with where the characters are at this time. Its reach is fine, its damage is not adequate. We need to change its damage. Why is this? Well, because for characters should be level 5 when they face this monster. 7 points of damage is not nearly enough. So we need to push this up so we're doing at least 17 to 21 points of damage each attack with our gargoyle. Okay? So how do we do this? I don't believe this is the best way to do this, but we're gonna fiddle around a little bit to see if we can make this work for us. This is still now a +4, so that's gone up for its strength, which means it's going to be a 9 instead of a 7. That's still nowhere near high enough. We've got to do a lot more damage than that. So what else can we do here? We can go, I think if we double it, will it be enough? If we double it, will it be enough? It may not nearly be enough. Okay, let's see. I almost feel like I should change the dice from a D4 to a D6, and that would be so much easier to solve. Let's see if we can go with the D4 for now. 2.5 is the average. If we multiply that by 4, we get this, and then we add 4. This is just not going to work. This is just not going to work. This size dice is just too small. It needs to go up. I know it's claws and teeth, but otherwise we're rolling too many bloody dice. It's just going to be painful. Or do I do it the other way and just... someone's going to whine if I change the dice, isn't it? I know what I'll do. I'm just going to make it more. There you go. So I'll make it 6. So 2.5 times 6 of these gives us that. Then we add the 4. Gives us 19. Which means we are in the ballpark. Right smack in the pickle barrel. Right there. So that's it. It's going to be a 6. Which means our average will be exactly where we need it to be. So that is 2.5, which is an average of, from the 4-sided dice, multiply that by 6, check it again, 15 plus the 4 is 19. Now, 2 attacks of 19 points of damage. Now we're talking. Now we're rocking. Now here's the problem. We have claws and we have bite. But what if you decide you want to bite and claw, or just claw and claw, or just bite and bite, and it's just a flavor. It's really just a... How do you as a game master, dungeon master, want to describe how your monster works? This is the easy solution without creating 2 lines of text. Bite or claw. In some cases they call it rend, and we could call it rend, but I think bite and claw is fine. +7, okay, and then our damage we've got, and it has slashing damage. Now, I know you're going to think, yeah, but Fred, it's bite's more like piercing damage. Why would it be slashing damage? Well, here's the solution. Again, piercing or slashing damage. So I've added in a new trait, or added in an old trait to the new stat block, and I've condensed down our bite and claw, because we really want them to do essentially the same sort of damage, and I think they really would. They really, why would they be any different? Are the claws more dangerous than the teeth? I don't think so. And there you go. It is simple as that. You decide which one. Do you want it to be bites or claws? Who gives a shit? You decide. If it's a bite, you make it piercing. If it's a claw, you make it slashing damage. You don't have to specify that. Frankly, in the end, it's really up to you as a game master. Heck, if you decide you're going to take your claws and you're not going to slash, but shove your claws into them, cool. If you're going to get, and when you go with the teeth and you're biting down and you pull away, then of course it's slashing as well, isn't it? So you could go either way. It really wouldn't matter. I think that is the easiest way to solve the gargoyle problem, in my opinion. That does most of it. Now, I was trying to think, is there any other features that a gargoyle would have, special abilities that it would have? And I think that no, in terms of attacks, that's all it needs to have. I think those are fine. What I would say here is the flyby and the false appearance are doing the majority of the work here. And what's supporting it is the damage immunities and the condition immunities. That's what really sort of makes the monster work. I think this is going to be far more successful as a gargoyle, and you shouldn't be throwing it at the players unless they are probably about level 4 or 5. And and it doesn't matter if they have a magic weapon or not, because frankly there is a way of getting past the the damage immunities. So yeah, I think that will work pretty well. Dinomancer, hello. Dinomancer is a patron. How's it going? And Dinomancer is a fellow New Zealander too, believe it or not. How are people in New Zealand and Aussie feeling about the Monster Manual and Player's Handbook being unavailable till April? So Dinomancer, the reality is it could be longer than that. The Player's Handbook has been purchased a new number of times from suppliers in New Zealand, and I mean, I know you can buy it off D&D Beyond. People have done that in New Zealand. I know somebody has done that, and they've got the books pretty early, so that's worked. If you want to try to get it off Amazon, you'll find that you probably can't do it because they won't ship to you. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, but the cost is astronomical. So it's not viable. It's actually probably more cheaper to buy it in New Zealand than to buy it from Amazon if you live in New Zealand. Because there's no Amazon in New Zealand, but there is in the States, and there is in Australia, but the Australian Amazon is shit. So I was talking to a few people about this. This won't really interest anybody unless you're in New Zealand. In America right now, they are supplying to key cities pretty well, and they are selling out and they have lots of copies. Other parts of America are not getting supplied quite so well, and you might find that you can't get the book if you're in America. If you're outside of America, such as in Canada or the UK, it's a little bit worse than the Americans, as you would expect. If you're in Australia, it's not great. If you're in New Zealand, it's really bad. Okay, so this is what I've been told. I was talking to one of the top stores, which I consider to be vagabond game stores, and they said, look, we ordered 100 copies of the Player's Handbook and 100 copies of the Dungeon Master Guide and 100 copies of the Monster Manual. And they gave us 5% of what we asked for. So they gave us 5 copies of the Player's Handbook, which we sold before it even got to the shelves. And it's gone. Same with the Dungeon Master Guide. And the Monster Manual, they expect to have similar problems. So it's not that the book is selling out; that is simply not providing enough copies of the book for people to buy. So there's part of your problem, Dinomancer. Okay, but the story doesn't finish there. They told me they've restocked the player's handbook 2 or 3 times now, and every time they restock, it becomes a problem because they only give them 5 copies when they ask for 100 copies. Now, the top countries in the world that play Dungeons and Dragons, the rest of the world couldn't give a shit about Dungeons and Dragons, frankly. But America is the top seller for D&D. The next one would be Canada, the next one would be Australia, and the next one is actually New Zealand, which has only got 5 million people, which means there's not a very big player base. And UK would be somewhere underneath that, okay, ultimately. So what they've said to me is that it could be a year or 2 before the supply is actually solved in New Zealand. Now, there's another funny thing. If you know about Mighty Ape in New Zealand, is an online store. It's kind of like our version of Amazon. Now, Amazon has lots and lots and lots of the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master Guide. They have a different problem. They can't sell the damn thing. They have stock sitting there that they have ordered in and nobody wants to buy it. Probably because the price is so high. So if you wanted to buy it off Mighty Ape and you're in a position to do so, you're much more likely to succeed. The Monster Manual is a different story. I think you're going to find that you won't be able to get access to it for a while. So there are 2 different things going on in New Zealand with regard to the supply. So I can assure you that the issues with supply of 2024 and 2025 are very different right across the world. I suspect that it's an awful mess. Wizards of the Coast has pulled back from the book distribution companies they used in the past, and it's created a lot of problems. They want you to go through D&D Beyond. That's essentially it. Okay, our group has the DMG and maybe 3 players' handbooks. We got in on the first wave, but the Monster Manual is a real issue. So Dinomancer, I am going to be remaking all the monsters for D&D 5e or 2024 or 2025 or D&D 5e or D&D 5.5 or whatever the hell it is. I'm going to do as many as I can, and I'm going to put it into a document. I'm going to make it available with some help from AJ Pickett and Wally DM, and we're going to make it available probably on Drive-Thru RPG. Reason being is that at Drive-Thru RPG you can probably buy a physical version or get the PDF nice and easy. And since it will be alpha play test as far as I'm concerned, because we won't have to have time to test it all, and really Wizards of the Coast never really tested anything that well anyway, you'll get this stuff. So if you wanted updated versions, it is coming. You just need to give us a little bit of time. I don't think we're going to get it done before April, but I don't think you're going to see the Monster Manual in New Zealand by April. I think you'll find that it will be well and truly gone. So that's my gripe. Now, look, people are wondering, and I know, those of you who play 5e and play D&D 2024 or 2014 or whatever the hell it is, you're probably wondering, am I going to talk or review the Monster Manual for 2025 that came out just recently? And the answer is yes, because people said, if I said one book I would cover that belongs to Wizards of the Coast, I'm only doing one, and they wanted the Monster Manual. So I will talk about it. But I'm going to take my sweet time to talk about it, because I want to make sure I get my facts right and I have assessed the book properly. So that is my intention. So also Dinomancer, you're going to get new classes through Patreon, as you already have. The rough versions right now, I know. And you're going to get species races as well. And you're going to get backgrounds. I'm going to fix your backgrounds for you. I know the new backgrounds suck. I've got an idea how to solve that problem. So all of that stuff is coming, okay? You just got to give me time. I'm one person. AJ is busy. Wally is very busy, so we just get as much done as we can. Good to hear. So good to hear. Remember to get some good abilities like exhaustion and ability nerfs, bloodies abilities. I'm not bringing back 4E mechanics, by the way. For those of you, Wizards of the Coast has brought back some 4E design concepts, quite a lot of them in fact, almost all of them, but I'm not going back to 4E. I played 4E. I would never go back to playing that game. I would never go back to playing 3.5. I would never go back to playing AD&D. I would go back to playing basic D&D But there's a strange reason for that, and I cannot explain it in this stream. For me right now, the book and the one that I'm really going to focus on is Shadow Dark. Making monsters for this is really what I want to do. Shadow Dark is, in my opinion, the best version of Dungeons and Dragons I've ever seen. And I've seen them all. I've seen them all, including the original one. Okay, I've read it. I haven't played it. I've read it. And I can tell you, this one, in my opinion, is the best one. And you're going to see a lot of Shadow Dark very, very shortly. Which is where I need to go right now, because I'm supposed to be working on that. So I'm going to end this poll. Let's go over the stat block very quickly so you can see the changes. Do I normally do this? I don't know, I can't remember. One of those things. So we're going to go over the stat block really quickly so you can see what I did, for those of you who are interested. And for those of you who are not interested, then that's cool. That's fine. Okay, so Gargoyle. We're remastering the old Gargoyle for D&D 5e or 2014, but also 2025, because I think there's some problems. And I have no issues with the alignment aspect of the monster. I've given it initiative. It's got a +3 to initiative, which means you don't need to roll dice, just use the 13. Okay, so you don't want it rolling low numbers and the players all go first. Its armor class is 15. I'm not going to put in that it has natural armor. I think it's unnecessary to state this. If you really want me to, I can, but I don't think it's a convention we need to worry about. Next, hit points. 132 is the maximum, and the average would be 90. If you have an inexperienced group, use 90. If you have a highly experienced group, use 132, or something in between. Okay? The speeds are all fine. I changed the strength. It's got an 18 for its strength score, which its modifier now becomes a +4, okay? Because it will need it for being a challenge rating 5 monster, no longer a challenge rating 2 monster. Totally inappropriate for this monster. It's got skills. Perception, +6. That means it has expertise, okay? Stealth also has expertise in stealth, because it should be stealthy. It is a guardian. Damage immunities, fire, necrotic, poison. Those are, and psychic. But also to slashing and piercing damage from non-magical weapons. If you have a magical weapon that does piercing and slashing damage, you're all good. But the thing you really want to have is you want to have a bludgeoning weapon, because that is probably the thing that will work. There are still plenty of damage types that can hurt the gargoyle. So I'm not worrying about this. This is a piece of the puzzle the players figure out as they go. Okay? Condition immunities. Don't think you can blind something that doesn't have eyeballs. Charmed, because traditionally AD&D you couldn't charm these things. Deafened, because it doesn't really have ears. They're magical ears. There's no real ears there. Exhaustion, because how do you exhaust a statue? It doesn't make any sense. Frightened. It doesn't get frightened. It's a construct. It's basically about a robot. It will just keep doing its thing. Petrified. It's already made of stone. Okay? And poisoned. How can you poison something that's made of stone? Doesn't make any sense. Instead of dark vision, it's blind sight to 120 feet, because it does not have any senses. It's all magical stuff going on here. Passive perception. Shouldn't be a 10, it should be a 16. Sorry about that. Primal or Tyran, I have no problems with the language. Leave it where it is. Challenge rating is 5. Proficiency bonus is +3. Flyby. The gargoyle doesn't provoke an attack of opportunity when it flies. It's as simple as that. So you can use your flyby attack. You're all good. False appearance. While the gargoyle remains motionless, it is indistinguishable from an inanimate statue and automatically succeeds on dexterity stealth checks to hide. That means there's no point rolling perception to detect. We want to avoid getting surprised by the monster, because it's going to win this. It's as simple as that. If it moves, it's a different story. Okay, then you will use your stealth modifier. Okay, so that's that. Next, attacks. It gets 2 attacks. I couldn't care how you lay it out. It could be bites, it could be claws. You get +7 to the attack roll. It's got a 5-foot reach. It does 19 points of damage. Okay, decent amount of stuff. 6d4 +4. I know that's a lot of 4-sided dice. You shouldn't be rolling dice anyway. Just use the average and add something else to it, like a 6-sided dice or a 4-sided dice to vary it up. And then you can decide whether it's piercing or slashing, because I honestly don't give a toss either, and I don't think it really matters. I think it gives you flexibility. That is how you solve the problem of the stat block for the gargoyle. And can I just say, I'm really looking forward to doing more of these monsters now, because now that I've removed the restriction on myself, about how you go about dealing with the monsters, because I can move the challenge rating, I can eliminate some of the restrictions that the Wizards of the Coast team has placed on themselves. I can pretty much solve a lot of the problems. Hi, Dragon Pulp. Is it Dragon Pulp? It's kind of funny that a war pick can't work on a gargoyle, but a wooden club would. A very niche interaction, but funny nevertheless. Yeah, and Dragon Pulp, you have pointed out something that, in my opinion, it would make sense that a dungeon master, game master, use their brain and decide that, look, let the war pick do something, or any kind of pick do something, because it's designed to go through rock, right? Break it up. I wouldn't worry about a wooden club, because wooden clubs aren't really just wooden clubs. Often they have metal bands around them and other things on them to strengthen them, because a wooden club is not really a wooden club. Not if it's used for weapon, for war. It's a very different. But I see where you're going with this. As I said, I don't think you should worry too much about that, though. I think that's an easy thing for your game master to solve. There's always going to be niche situations, and I think far too many times we get too worried about the bullshit, because that's what it is. So we just don't need to worry about that sort of thing. It's one of the great things about this game, man, is it just gets past the bullshit. I'm going to talk a lot about Shadow Dark in the future. Anyway, do you think the Gargoyle stat block for Dungeons & Dragons 2025 or 5e needs fixing? Yes, 50%. Undecided, 50%. No, 0%. Just watching. Oh, that's out of 10 votes. Interesting. Okay. Anyway, I am done. I need to go. And work on some classes, 10 classes, and a lot of ancestries for Shadow Dark, because I'm running out of time. I'm supposed to get that sorted out, ready for layout. So I better go, eh? But I will be back tomorrow to do magic items, magic bags. And we'll be back next week to do some more monsters. We might actually finally get to do the bullet. That one. Anyway, huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you to everybody who took part in the poll. I do appreciate it. Thanks so much to all of my patrons who support me on Patreon, because I really do need that. It's dropped significantly recently, and I know people are hurting financially, so I understand. But really, that's what kind of right now is keeping the lights open. Otherwise, I just can't run it costs money to do live streams and run a YouTube channel. It really does. Thank you to those people in chat. So Dragon Pulp, Dinomancer or Dino, Fred Huber, and JWS. Thank you for commenting. And Thomas, thanks very much. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.